right, welcome along to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. Raf Diallo here and joined today by Keith Treacy and Conan Byrne. We're on RTÉ.ie, YouTube, Spotify and Apple, which is also where you'll be able to catch our daily RTÉ Soccer Women's World Cup podcast, where we run through the latest from the tournament with Ireland and the other 31 nations. So for everything World Cup related, check those out. We'll have Ireland's opening game on Thursday against Australia with live coverage on RT2 and the RT Player from 10:30 a.m. And before that, on the same channel, co-host New Zealand kick off the tournament against one of the big hitters, Norway, and you can watch that from 8 a.m. But before we talk League of Ireland and the European fixtures and some other matters, Conan, of course, Denise O'Sullivan, there was a huge scare around her from the abandoned game against Colombia, a late challenge. I think the footage has since emerged of what that tackle looked like, but on the eve of a tournament and with a friendly, it was quite worrying. Fortunately, a little bit more encouraging since.
Yeah, absolutely. And she obviously she didn't take part in full training this morning, and just watching some of the footage from the training this morning, she was just using her right foot throughout, and in terms of her passing and all that, her left leg, she was just for standing on, didn't want any impact from a football perspective, which is extremely positive considering only 72 hours ago she was in hospital. But yeah, it's one of those things as well that when you hear that the footage has come through from the game, you're expecting the challenge probably to be an awful lot worse than it looked. But at the same time, you have to take it in context of the previous 20 minutes that led up to that point, where there was a couple of yellow cards. Well, a yellow card was given for that challenge. There was a yellow card previously. And the tackle itself, when you look at it really, really closely, the defender does go over the ball on Denise. And it was a poor challenge. I think people might have expected it to be a 2-footer sliding in over the ball, but it was still a very poor tackle. So encouraging signs since. I don't know if it's the case that she'll make the game on Thursday. Like, as I said, from the footage this morning, there was no contact with the ball with her left foot at all. It was as if she was just trying to get a bit of movement herself, which is, as I said, which is great to see. So that's probably what we're going to be talking about for the next couple of days, is who's going to be replacing her. Does Megan Connolly go into midfield and Claire O'Riordan go? It's in the three at the back. I think Vera Pauw prefers Claire to Diane Caldwell in that position. So Megan Connolly's well able to play in midfield. Does Lily Agg come in for her? Or maybe even throw in a surprise, Sinead Farley, to be that creative spark in the middle alongside Ruisha, and then bring Abby Larkin into the fold in the wing and use that fitness and pace to deal with Steph Catley down that left-hand side for Australia. So, really, really interesting what's going to take place over the next couple of days. And but let's hope it goes well for Denise and of course Ireland.
Yeah, obviously fingers crossed, and obviously we'll be following it closely on the daily World Cup podcasts starting from today and throughout Ireland's involvement in the tournament. And you can also read Megan Campbell's column on RT.ie, and there's a preview show on RT2 and the RT Player on Wednesday at 8 p.m. with Ivan McQuillan and Peter Collins. And turning our attentions to the League of Ireland sides in Europe, Keith, I mean, ended up being a week that seemed to promise much last week and delivered very little in terms of results and even goals. There was only the one goal scored overall between the four sides. Shamrock Rovers losing to Breidablik in the Champions League, Pats losing to Dundalk in the Conference League, Derry City and Dundalk being held to goalless draws at HB, Tórshavn and Bruno's Magpies respectively. But your overall thoughts before we go into detail on each of them.
My overall thoughts is I still hold out a lot of hope. I think obviously the Shamrock Rovers game is going to be very difficult going away to Iceland. I think Pats obviously have a decent hill to climb as well, but I expect Dundalk having the second leg at home and Derry having the second legs at home. I expect them to get over the line. Tórshavn and Bruno Magpies were probably a little bit better than everybody expected, being from Gibraltar and the Faroe Islands respectively, but I still, with Derry going back to the north of Ireland and Dundalk bringing them back to the Republic, I expect them to get over the line. But I'm a little bit worried about Shamrock Rovers and Pats, to be honest. If you want me a quick sum up of it, I think Pats maybe have a better chance of getting over the line. I think Breidablik surprised a lot of people, especially the first 45 minutes in Tallaght. I thought they were really, really good. The second half, Rovers were a little bit more competitive. They weren't as passive in their press, and it was it was more of a competitive game. But look, I think Breidablik felt Rovers power, Rovers felt Breidablik, and Breidablik are the ones who are more confident going into the second leg.
Yeah, for sure. And let's listen to Breidablik's manager, Oscar Thorvaldsen, and then Stephen Bradley as well before we delve deeper into that Shamrock Rovers first leg.
Oscar, congratulations. You came here with a plan tonight. Have we just seen your players execute it brilliantly?
I think we laid the foundation for the victory in the first half. Then we executed our plan as good as we could. I think the first half was brilliant, but in the second half we were they were a much stronger team. They had more of the possession and kind of controlled the game without creating big chances. But as the game grew, we got more tired, started to chase, and we had to suffer a lot in the second half. I'm incredibly proud of my players. I've said it before the game. Shamrock Rovers is a really good team. Not many teams come away here with a victory, and we saw that tonight. That they are a brilliant possession team that can play the ball and solve even the tightest of spaces. So once we were a little bit on the back foot, we suffered.
You had 65 fans tonight. You will have a bigger crowd on a pitch that you're used to playing on. You said before the game that Shamrock Rovers were favourites. Has that now flipped in your advantage?
No, it's just half time. So there are probably now there might be no favourites, but Shamrock Rovers is a bigger team than us. They're more European pedigree. They have a bigger budget and are just a bigger club. So obviously they will be probably going into the tie as a favourites, and we need to make sure that we play the full 90 minutes as we played the first half. We can't allow ourselves to fall down and drop back and be on the back foot as much as we did in the second half. But then again, you against good teams you suffer.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Stephen, the panel in studio are saying you won't be pressing the panic button just yet. Overall, how do you reflect on that performance?
Yeah, first half I felt we gave them too much respect. We didn't play with enough intensity in and out of possession. We were too passive in our passing and our press, and as a result they hurt us in the first half. But second half was a lot more like us, and we caused them real problems. We created the best opportunities in the game, and we got to bring that second half over there next week, and I've no doubt we can win the game.
That must be a frustration from your perspective, that they pressed you so much trying to play out from the back, but they seem to be allowed far too much time, far too much space to build it themselves.
Yeah, we knew how to press. They press the same all the time, but there's big spaces if you're aggressive and you penetrate, and we didn't do that first half. Like I said, we were playing square and setting up the press, and if you do that in Europe, you usually get punished. And that's what we did first half. Second half was a lot better. We were a lot more aggressive in our play in terms of penetrating through the lines, and we really caused them problems.
How much of a step up then in overall performance is going to be required next week?
Just bring what we brought second half. I think you see in second half we create enough opportunities and caused them enough problems to know if we play at that level, there's no doubt in my mind we can win the game and go through.
How is it as a dressing room?
Frustration, because we feel we let 45 minutes get away from us, and the players know that, we know that. I have to take responsibility for the information and how it was given. That's on me, but I felt second half we were very, very good.
Good luck next week.
Thank you.
All right, so that is Shamrock Rovers manager Stephen Bradley, and before that Oscar Thorvaldsen, the boss of Breidablik, who was doing his utmost to run away from the favourites tag as quickly as possible, Conan. But they would have gone in as underdogs in that first leg, but and there was a sense maybe they would be vulnerable from set pieces and they would need to get used to Shamrock Rovers' system and sort of that box midfield, and yet they're the ones that really set the template for the game.
Yeah, I think as Stephen Bradley said, they showed too much respect to their opponents, and in terms of the Breidablik, they did their homework on Shamrock Rovers. They know how dangerous they are in possession, with the quality of players they had. So they tried to negate that as much as possible by pressing high, and then when they got it, being so composed on the ball and passing it around. And Shamrock Rovers really, really struggled in that first half. And I'm sure Stephen Bradley let the hairdryer treatment out at half time, because the second half was a completely different affair. Control the tempo. A lot of good play. Sean Cavan had a great opportunity to equalise. He skied it with his unfavoured right foot. And even with a couple of minutes to go, we had a good chance as well. So I do think there's positives, signs for Shamrock Rovers. But at the same time, like Keith says, it's a very difficult ask to go away from home to Iceland, to try and overcome a 1-0 deficit. It's going to be a very tough game. They played, Breidablik played at the weekend as well. They had a 1-0 win over Fram, who are third from bottom in the Icelandic League. So the confidence remains high within the camp. And Shamrock Rovers have an uphill task.
Yeah, and the intensity question, Keith, I mean, that was probably the factor in the first half from Shamrock Rovers' point of view, or the lack of it in that sense. But how difficult is it to switch that on and off, especially when the opposition have done their homework and they've blocked off particular passing lanes that maybe you would automatically think about going down that way, but because it's not there, you're kind of losing a couple of seconds trying to think of where to put the ball next.
Yeah, well, that's where problem solvers on the pitch come into play. You know, managers will send you out with an ideal game plan, but obviously other teams are going to be reactive to that. So you need to be able to think on the fly, and a lot of players in that Shamrock Rovers dressing room can. But I think Rovers were just a little bit surprised. The opening 45 minutes, I think, when you go out there and your intention is to go and press high with lots of energy, and you go and do it once or twice and Breidablik go bop, 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 and you think, my God, these are good. And you start to just drop back and drop back. It's the most human thing in the world to do. And then obviously when you get in at half time, Stephen Bradley just said, listen, lads, they are decent, but we still need to press them. And it was a lot more of a game in the second half. But Shamrock Rovers just made a lot of basic mistakes. There was a corner I think it was in the 10th minute of the game, or just inside the first 10 minutes, inside the 6-yard box. I think Sean Hall loses his man and the header straight at the goalkeeper. Otherwise, Rovers would have been 1-0 down in the first 10 minutes. You can't do things like that. You just can't do things like that in Europe. And I know Rovers are at home in the first leg and they were a little bit more expansive, but I know Rovers European away record is not great. So maybe a little bit more pragmatic in the second half. I know Gaffney was winning these battles up there, but he was so often outnumbered and isolated at times. But if they could get somebody a little bit closer to him and go direct over that Breidablik pressing, inevitably then Breidablik will drop off. You can go and find a little bit of holes. And the one encouraging thing for me is when Graham Burke came on in the second half, he did look like he had something to go and open them up. And even Stephen Bradley said it, you have to be brave in your playing out. And there was once or twice they had little inventive balls, a little flick around the corner, or if he had ricochet, and all of a sudden they beat the press and they look like they could go and hurt them. But need to be very, very brave, and they have to get it right for 90 minutes over there. If they try and play out from the back and get it wrong once or twice, the ball could very easily end up in the back of their own net. So I think it's a huge task, but not one that Rovers can't do. But I would be siding with Breidablik on that. I think even the way the manager spoke there, running away from the favourites tag, keeping the lads honest. I think they're a really good team that maybe Shamrock Rovers have underestimated in the first 45 minutes of football, and that could come back to hunt them.
Yeah, and Conan, just on this second leg then for Tuesday night in Iceland, and how do you think Shamrock Rovers should approach it? Because as Keith has outlined there, you know, Breidablik are dangerous, and away games in Europe they're always going to be tricky, especially when you have to chase it. Like how early do you chase it? Do you look to be cagey in the first half and then maybe try and up the ante in the second, or how do you think Shamrock Rovers should or will do it?
Yeah, they need to be compact. They need to be strong defensively, which they weren't in the first half on last week. As Keith said, I'd love to see Graham Burke starting the game, because he will create those little passages that players will play into. He gets into great positions. He's brilliant on the half turn as well, so we can get at the Breidablik defenders really, really quickly. So yeah, I do think they shouldn't go gung ho. Obviously, they're only 1-0 down. Manage themselves into the game really, really well. Hold possession of the ball, which is really, really important. Work the Breidablik players, but also you have to keep an eye on some of these players. Like Ojofsson is a fantastic player. He's done really, really well. He's got 7 goals in the league this season, so you have to keep an eye on him. And their defender Gunnlausen, 7 assists from defence. These are the type of players that Stephen Bradley will be telling his players to be keeping an eye on, because they can hurt you. They really can. And from set plays, we saw the free kick, and then the set pieces as well, that they're very, very strong from. So apart from that, as I said, just keep it compact. First 30, 35 minutes, see how they are then, and then second half, off they go and try and get a result.
Yeah, and then the Europa Conference League, of course, Pats lost 2-1 to F91 Dudelange in Luxembourg, but unlike Shamrock Rovers, they have the advantage of home advantage for the second leg, and it's Mark Doyle's late goal really that keeps the tie alive after Van Lingen and Romer scored in each half earlier for Dudelange. Now, Keith, John Daly was talking about Pats being a bit loose in possession, just turning the ball over too often. Was that the only factor behind behind them sort of going 2-0 down at that stage?
I think there was a couple of factors, Raf. I think Pats were a little bit off. I think they can definitely play an awful lot better than they did in that first leg. When you look at Jake Mulroney, I think Dudelange did their homework on him. They knew to press him high, didn't let him get up ahead of steam. Generally just kept them quiet. I think Chris Forrester was quite quiet, and you can't really throw that at Chris this season. He's been outstanding. You only had to have a look. I think it's 11 or 12 goals in the Irish League already. So very, very hard to throw that at Chris, but I do think he was quiet during the week. But like I said, they were taking a step into the unknown. John Daly said beforehand they haven't had a lot of footage on Dudelange. They've a new manager anyway. Even if they had had footage, it would have all went out the window. So very difficult to know what they were stepping into. And again, we go back to problem solvers on the pitch. And again, look at Dudelange. They were decent. They weren't bad. They players up front, they can hurt you. Hadji up front had, I think, 23 goals last season he scored. So he's very sharp. 33 years of age. So probably won't hurt you with his pace. He's more of a build-up player. But they do have decent players in their team. I expect Pats to be an awful lot better. I do think it's still in the balance. I think Pats at times just kept forcing the play. They were inviting a bit of pressure on them. But look, that Pats, I think they were dominating in that game. If Mark Doyle doesn't get that late goal, you're thinking it was a really poor performance and a really poor result. As it stands, I think it was a really poor performance, but a half decent result. And that one goal from Mark Doyle just has a really different feel in the Pats' heads. And look, I'm doing commentary on it again during the week, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. I'm hoping Pats. It's already a sellout in Chicago. We bounce, and I'm sure everybody will get behind them and give them every chance. But I just Dudelange, I think they're still in their pre-season. They're just starting their pre-season, so hopefully they won't be 100%. We can put them under a bit of caution. They do buckle a bit, so I'm very, very hopeful. I think Dudelange again, just like the Breidablik, I think they were a little bit better than people are expecting. You hear that they're from Luxembourg, and you think, okay, they're not great, but they're not bad from what I've seen. And considering that they are in pre-season, like I say, and they're not optimal fitness just yet, very impressed with them. So Pats have to work it out for them, but I hold out a lot of hope for that.
Yeah, and also in the Conference League, Dundalk drawn 0-0 at Bruno's Magpies, Conan, and on paper maybe it looks like maybe not and even looking at the I suppose some of the highlights as well, maybe it didn't look like the best of performances. But then when you factor in 31 degrees heat, and we know from the news at the moment what Southern Europe is like at the moment, and bringing the game back now to Oriel Park, I mean they will fancy their chances, and in the end a 0-0 draw where they did get it, not a bad result.
No, and I would have said it would have been a poor result without the heat, I think. Like 31, 32 degrees. I know Gab McLaughlin, the Dundalk media communications officer, spoke to the players after the game on Dundalk TV, and that's what they were talking about more than anything, was the heat that affected the players. And like with Bruno Magpies, similar to Dudelange, Raf, is the fact that they haven't played a competitive game since April. So these teams are going to improve as well. It's not a case that we should be expecting now Pats or Dundalk or even Derry to come home and put in a convincing victory. It doesn't work like that. They'll still have to be really, really guarded in defence, but with the home support behind them and with the quality of players that they have, you would expect them to go through. But it's definitely not 100% going to happen. I do think, looking at Dundalk, they need to strengthen, I think, before the end of the transfer window, and with like they have Hubin and Kelly up front that played the other night, really, really good players, but they've suffered some injuries over the last number of months, and without them they've struggled. So they do need to strengthen in this month. But at the same time, you do, as I said, it's a good 0-0 draw considering the heat and the weather that they were in. But it's very, very important that they get over the line this week, both Derry and Dundalk.
Yeah, because Derry, of course, as well, also a 0-0 draw at HB Torshavn on Torshavn's synthetic pitch. And Keith, I mean, again, looking at the footage of this game as it played out, most of the early chances seemed to go to Torshavn, but Derry grew into it and probably a little bit of momentum going into this week's second leg then.
Yeah, Derry did start slow, but I go back to it. I just think the second leg being in Derry gives them a huge advantage. And look, I as a player, when you play in Europe, and I'm not sure how Conan played in Europe a lot more than I did, but I always look playing away first because I think it just sets the style out that you're going to go there, you're going to suffer physically, mentally, you're going to be out of possession. Just give everything you can, empty the tank, get it back, get them back home, and don't beat them there. And I think Dundalk and Derry will both be saying that. Look, lads, we've gone over there, we've kept it tight, we've suffered, we've done the physical stuff now. Let's go and express ourselves now in the home game. And with the likes of Duffy, Patch, and McElhenney and McGonigal, you just think there's enough firepower there to be able to get them past Torshavn. And yeah, it was a fairly even game. I think Dundalk had the better chances, the more shots on target, only just shaded the possession. But I do expect Derry to be a little bit more dominant. I think what Conan is saying is right. We're all a little bit surprised by how decent all of these teams are. But out of all the games, I expect Derry to be a little bit more dominant over Torshavn than anybody else.
Yeah, and then domestically here in the Premier Division on Friday night, Shelbourne and Bohemians played out a 1-1 draw at Talca Park, and then Drogheda United got back to winning ways, winning 3-1 at UCD, and then on Saturday night, Sligo Rovers beat Cork City 3-0, and Conan, from a Sligo Rovers point of view, big win for them, and puts a bit of distance between themselves and second from bottom, and I suppose no coincidence that Max Mata was to the fore, and also Radoslajevic seemed to be quite influential in the game too.
Yeah, another goal for him. Now it's 2-2 for Radoslajevic. And again, for Sligo, 2 wins in 3, and that their defeat came to Derry City, where Will Patching's penalty in the last minute kind of ended that little mini revival, because they needed to bounce back from their defeat against UCD about a month ago now, and they have done that in their performances. They beat Bows, they've obviously beat Cork, and they put in a brilliant performance up in Derry. Albeit they lost in the last minute. So yeah, it seemed to have turned the corner a little bit, which is great, and no surprise to see Max made it back on the score sheet and back in the squad and doing really, really well. And that's really why they're starting to come back from it now. You flip that and you can see a lot of people, Cork City annoyance over the performance, but with the news breaking then over the following 24 hours of what happened, you can understand possibly why Cork City kind of folded like they did in the second half, with the unfortunate death of Rory Keating's father, which I'm sure we pass on our condolences to his family. But I don't know, in that situation yourself as a footballer, and you come in at half time and one of your teammates has to go off and hearing about that sad passing, it's going to affect your performance. Your professionalism doesn't come into play in those situations. You're going out just to fulfill a fixture, and but your thoughts are completely with your teammate in that situation. So not that I'm saying give Cork City a free pass here. I'm just saying that it's I think we have to give credit to Sligo, and Cork will probably come back from this down on at FAI Cup weekend this weekend.
Yeah, for sure. So thoughts with Rory Keating and his family on the sad passing of his dad. Kieran, Cork City had put out a statement in the wake of that, saying all at Cork City are deeply saddened at the passing of Kieran Keating, father of our player Rory Keating. We extend our deepest sympathies to Rory and the entire Keating family at this exceptionally difficult time. May he rest in peace. And as I said earlier, elsewhere on Friday night, Drogheda, who are involved in that sort of mix, trying to avoid second from bottom, they got a very valuable win at UCD to get back to winning ways. But one thing I wanted to ask both of you actually was just in regards to some of the UCD players in this very difficult season for them on the pitch, which players have stood out. So Keith, are there any kind of UCD players you've looked at over the season where you thought actually, they're standing out in what is a difficult campaign?
Yeah, well, I like Kinsella Bishop. I do like him. I think he has a little bit about him. But it's soul destroying for me, because I've been doing commentary now for the last couple of years in the League of Ireland, and I tipped UCD to stay up last year, and that was all because of Tom Lonergan. I just thought his goals would keep them in the league. They had enough of a structure, and Tom Lonigan obviously moves on, Alex Nolan moves on. The better players just constantly moves on. And I know that's the nature of UCD, I get that, but it's just soul destroying that they're just constantly in this now. And I'm saying I like Kinsley Bishop. I fully expect him to go out the door, if not this month, at the end of the year. So yeah, I like Kinsley Bishop. He's probably the one that's standing out at the minute. But been really detached at the bottom of the league. They're literally just going out to have a game of football, seeing what they can do, and just taking it game by game. But yeah, Kinsley Bishop is the one who I like.
Yeah, and Conan, similarly, any players that stand out for you?
Yeah, like it's hard because like there's these with UCD, they have players that are finishing up their masters or their degrees in May and June, and they have to move on. And we've seen that there with Sam Todd, obviously going back up to Derry City. We've seen that in previous years with Liam Kerrigan, Dylan Duffy finishing up, Tom Lonergan, Georgie Kelly. All these players that have finished their degrees, they or finished their studies, they move on from the club, and it's very, very difficult. But in the meantime, they've brought in some players that have been with the club before. The likes of Sean Brennan has returned. Adam Verdon has come in from Longford Town as well. So these are players that will hope to just steady the ship a little bit. They have Jack Keeney, obviously their captain. He's a good player. An 18-year-old Jake Doyle has impressed me this season, but they're probably their best player has been Alex Nolan, and yet, as I said, his time has come to an end. He signed for St. Pat's last week, so which by the way is a great move for him. So that's just the way it is at UCD. They have fantastic players that come through their youth system, but the rule is that once they finish, they have to move on, and it's difficult for them. Probably frustrating for Andy Myler as well, considering that you might have players only for 6 months of the year, and then you have to have bring in new players to finish the season. So it's very, very difficult. And in that regard, I think they're having a very good season because they don't have the likes of Liam Kerrigan in their team, the likes of Dylan Duffy in their team, Tom Lonergan. They don't have that this season. So it's a very, very difficult task for Andy Myler.
Yeah, and so those couple of results we've talked about there. So Sligo Rovers now on 29, Drogheda on 28, Cork City on 23, and UCD on 9. And then further up the table, then Shells and Bows shared the spoils, 1-1 draw, as we said. And looking at it, both sides created decent chances up to the point then when Moylan scored, and this came after an error from Talbot after Hakiki's shot. Moylan, of course, being linked with Lincoln City, Keith, but clearly a player that Shells would probably need to keep around.
Yeah, I think Moylan and Boyd, the two boys up front for Shells, I think they're a great little duo. I think they work off each other really, really well. And I was disappointed for Damien Duff on the weekend. I thought Shelbourne were a better team for large periods of the game. Bowes obviously had that threat. You could see they had it. If they clicked in the final third, they could make it happen. But I thought Shells were dominant for large periods. Bowes looked dangerous early on, putting some really dangerous balls into the box. But then Shells also looked dangerous as well. And neither team were very convincing defensively. So you're thinking there's going to be goals in this very tight, competitive first half with a decent tempo. And then that mistake from the goalkeeper when he just slips it, lets it squeak out of his arms, tall that Moylan taps it in. You're thinking, right, Shells are going to go and win this, keep it tight. I think Damien Duff changed formation to a 4-5-1 as well, tried to make it a little bit more compact. And then Afolabi, it was a decent finish, a little pull back on the half volley, decent finish, and they go and get the winner. But Bowes when I seen Bowes at Pats at the start of the year, and the front three, the McDonald in the middle as well, I thought they were outstanding. I thought they could really go and give Shamrock Rovers a chase. But they just come off the boil ever so slightly. You can see that they still have it, but it's just getting it out of them on a consistent basis. But look, I think Shells, again, it's very easy to forget, that this is only their second year in the big boy league. So they're taking to it like a duck to water. And the Jack Moylan thing, I wouldn't be surprised if he was there. I know he's been linked with Lincoln, but I think a lot of rumours as well are Hull that he might be going over to Hull, given the relationship between Shelbourne and Hull at the minute. So, yeah, I think nobody really wanted a draw. I think if either team, Shelbourne or Bowes, to win that, they might have been able to start talking about Europe, thinking about challenging for Europe. The draw doesn't really help either of them.
Yeah, and Conan Bowes have brought Danny Grant back in as well, and I think the the final season he was at Bowes before he initially left for Huddersfield. He'd scored 7 goals in 17, and that was during the COVID shortened season. So what does he bring to the table? Because I know we've talked a little bit about the service for Afolabi, not despite his recent good form, that maybe the service up to the recent points in the season wasn't brilliant from the wings, but I guess Grant is one possible answer to that now.
He is, yeah, and he has to get back to the form that sent him over to England in the first place, because he does have wonderful talent, and he has something that not many wingers in the League of Ireland have now, is that directness, that run at defenders to get balls into the box, and an Afolabi will be the one to put those chances away that hopefully that Danny Grant will be able to create. Because there's too many times, I said it to you the last couple of times I've been on, Raf, said it too many times, is that wingers these days, they don't put balls into the box. You make runs time and time again, and as a striker and a centre forward, you look at the likes of Sean Boyd and Afolabi and Owen Doyle, Conor Carty and Pat Hooban, and they make these runs time and time again, the ball doesn't get delivered, and it can be so frustrating for them. But with a player like Danny Grant, who comes in, who has that directness to run at players and get balls into the box, it gives Bowes striking options the opportunity to put the ball in the back of the net, and that's exactly what they need. Afolabi obviously has 4 goals in his last four games, but he only has 2 in the previous 18. So it's a huge confidence boost for him, and 3 of his 4 goals in that space of time have come in the 80th minute plus. So he's a big player for them in those last few minutes when they need a goal. And Danny Grant would be kind of similar to, I'm not saying a similar player to Jack Moylan, but in terms of he gambles in the final third. He's not afraid to lose the ball. He takes chances and he takes risks, and he's going to be a huge asset to Bowes if he regains that form that he did that sent him away.
Yeah, and in the first division, of course, the Waterford Treaty United game was postponed due to, I guess, the inclement weather. But elsewhere on the Friday night, Finn Harps beat Cove Ramblers 4-3 in a thriller. Athlone Town were defeated 1-0 by Galway United, who just continue their relentless march at the top. And then Wexford beat Bray Wanderers 3-0 away from home. And then on Saturday night, Longford Town beat Kerry 2-1. And now we're kind of going straight into the first round of the FAI Cup as well. And I know you were looking at the fixture list earlier, Conan, and looking at it anyway, there's what is it, three fixtures that are like all Premier Division, so a lot of the focus will go that way.
Yeah, obviously Dublin Derby, Bowes v Shells is a big game. Drogheda v Sligo as well, and then obviously between Bowes and Shells and Dundalk and Rovers, Dundalk Rovers going to be on the Sunday with the European exploits. So 3 all Premier Division ties. So big teams are going to be exiting the competition early on, which gives the so-called lesser teams the opportunity to progress through the rounds. And that's great to see as well. I remember with Sporting Fingal back in 2009 when we eventually went on to win the cup. We got a bit of luck along the way, and that's what you need. And but like there's some tasty encounters like Kerry v Ringmahon as well. I'm looking at that one. That looks like a decent game considering how strong Ringmahon are. Gerald Morrissey, former Cork player, plays with them. So he's a very, very, very good player. Then you have there's a potential upsets, Raf, here, like Kilbarrack hosting Finn Harps. They're not moving the game. They're having it in Kilbarrack, and they got promoted last year from the Leinster Senior League, and they're gone to the top division this year. So that's a big game for them and their supporters. And then St. Michael's v Waterford as well, with how well St. Michael's are doing in Tipperary. So it's some tasty encounters, and I'm expecting a few upsets. But from a Premier Division point of view, if they're playing a lower league team, they should never be beaten, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Keith, I suppose your own experiences, whether it's in the FAI Cup or even across in the FA Cup, when there's these potential giant killings, and you're coming up against teams that on paper are like non-league or below your level, just like how tricky can those be? Because I know on paper it looks like some challenge that should be overcome, but we've seen time and time again historically that there's always potential for as Conan has said, for upsets.
Yeah, it's horrible. I've been on both ends. I've been in the Premier League team going to a so-called lower team where you're expected to win. I've been in a lower team playing a Premier League team where you're expected to lose. So as a player, I hated being the big boy in the room because it's a thankless task. And I was at Blackburn Rovers in particular in the FA Cup. I was one of these fringe players that when the FA Cup rolled around, I would play, but he'd keep the spine of the team in. So it was one of them. If we win, we would expect it to win, and if we lost, it was whoever's fault it was who came in. So whoever doesn't generally play, which would be me, it was my fault. So I always thought it was a bit of a thankless task being the big boy, because if you win, you're expected to. If you lose, it's pretty much your fault. So I think it's always better to be the underdog in these situations. You have it all to gain and nothing to lose, and you can go out there and just give it all. So yeah, what Conan says is true. Any of the big boys going to the so-called lower teams, they shouldn't lose on paper. If they match the work rate of the opposition, they generally will be able to let the talent shine through. But football is not played on paper, and that's why I love the FAI Cup, and that's why I love the FA Cup, because the big boys get to throw a couple of digs at the small boys, should I say, get to throw a couple of digs at the bigger boys.
Yeah, and also there is a cup final in the Avenir Sports All-Island Cup on Sunday, coming at the showgrounds, Conan, and Galway United against Cliftonville. Great opportunity for Galway, who have had a lot of recent growth, especially like obviously it was Galway WFC previously, but this season, of course, they're linked in with the men's club, and they have made a lot of progress in recent times, and this would be one way to cap it, especially at this point where the season is on hiatus because of the World Cup.
Yeah, it's going to be a great day, great adventure for the teams that have got to the final. Obviously, Cliftonville and Galway, probably two teams that you may not have expected to get there at the start of the competition. But full credit to Galway heading down to Wexford to win that game. And even in the semi-final, you're probably expecting the Cliftonville v Wexford final. But Galway did really, really well to defeat Wexford down on their home patch. Really, really good performance. And even Cork City heading up to Northern Ireland, to Cliftonville, where they had to do it 2 weekends in a row, and only losing 1-0 was a devastating blow to them, considering how poor they're doing in domestic action. So I did talk about maybe having a festival of football, having both semi-finals on the same day, which would have been nice. But now the final at the showgrounds, hopefully we can see a big crowd for two very, very good teams that have progressed really, really well this season. And with Galway United, as you said, mixing now with making a one club team, which is always great to see, similar to what Wexford are doing and Shells are doing, and a lot of the League of Ireland clubs are doing, which is great. And hopefully they'll be able to put their name on this cup for the first time.
Yeah, and over in the Premier League and Arsenal, obviously, Keith, I think it's worth bringing up now. This has taken about 2 weeks to get over the line, albeit it is a lot of money, £105 million for Declan Rice to move from West Ham to the Gunners. And what's your thoughts on the move overall, and also coupled with the fact they've been able to get Jurriën Timber, who's very highly rated from Ajax as a very versatile defender, and then Kai Havertz, who scored Chelsea's winner in the Champions League final a couple of years ago, but maybe whose form is, there's always a little bit of uncertainty about just how good he is, what's his best position.
Yeah, I think as an Arsenal fan, I might be being a little bit biased here, Raf. I think Arsenal have done the best business so far in the transfer window. When you look at Declan Rice, Havertz and Timber, the only one that's probably a question mark over is Timber, is because he hasn't played in the Premier League. But when he's played for the Netherlands, he looks solid. He looks really, really good. One of the best right backs I've seen. So I'm really excited to see how he does. Havertz at Chelsea coming in, he looked a really good player at Chelsea, but he just seemed to get lost in a really, really big pool. So hopefully Mikel Arteta can get him in, make him feel like he's 10 feet tall, make him feel loved at the club. I think he's one of those players, if you put your arm around, make him feel loved, make him feel like he's a big, big part of the team. I think they'll get the best out of him. And Declan Rice, we're all expecting him to hit the ground running, obviously just moving across London. So, yeah, if Declan Rice goes on to be the player that every Arsenal fan is expecting him to be, I think a lot of people are counting him to be the next England captain as well, with the likes of Thomas Partey in there, Odegaard as well, as, just getting better and better as the games go on. So I think Arsenal have done really, really good business. But there's a couple of clubs. I think Aston Villa have done really good business on the sly with Pau Torres and Yuri Tillemans coming in the door there as well. I think that's really good business. And I think that the bargain so far of the transfer window has to be Alexis McAllister, 35 million for a World Cup winner. And when you see what he was doing at Brighton, when you see what he did for Argentina in the World Cup, outstanding. And to get that sort of talent in the door for 35 million, absolute bargain.
Yeah, and I suppose before we go, there was of course the interview that Dele Alli did with Gary Neville on his channel, The Overlap, as well, where he kind of discussed some of the issues and like pretty horrendous issues he'd experienced as a youngster, and then also some of the issues that have been affecting him more recently in terms of his form. And I suppose, Conan, it's a reminder sometimes, you know, when we're talking about players' performance, and Dele Alli has been somebody whose form has been under scrutiny for a while, but it's always been talked about in a footballing sense. But we have to remember people, I guess, are human beings, and that there's sometimes other things going on in the background that maybe explains performance.
And that's the problem with modern day football. You're in the limelight 24/7, and if you step outside your home, you're going to be talked about no matter what you're doing, whether you're going out for dinner with your partner or going out for a few drinks with your friends, whether it's the right thing to do or wrong thing to do, you're going to be talked about for doing that. And with Dele Alli, no player, in my opinion, could sustain what he has done and keep going with what he has been through over his life. I think it's physically impossible, and that's why I have to give him so much credit for being able to do that from such a young age, starting out at MK Dons, and then getting into the first team at MK Dons, and then progressing from there. Unbelievable achievement for him to be able to go as far as he did with the pain and anguish that has happened in his life. And I just wish him well. I just hope now that the fact that it's out there, that the support network is strong for him, that because he'll need it. And I'm sure he has the full support of his teammates, but most importantly, his manager, Sean Dyche.
Yeah, and Keith, Sean Dyche is obviously somebody you know very well, and great manager, and probably the perfect manager for Dele Alli to have at Everton in terms of bouncing back now and trying to kind of almost restart his career.
Yeah, well, I think he's in the best place he can be with Sean Dyche as a manager. I told many stories about him, treating me as a human being, and actually looking past me as a footballer. It was almost second nature. He didn't really care about me as a footballer. He wanted to sort of person out. And the one thing for me that stands out in Dele Alli's interview is that he is addressing these issues now, these things that were in his head that he seemed to be running away from. And I've heard, I've never actually met Dele Alli back in the day, but I've heard things about him that he's a very popular lad, but always felt a little bit distant and a little bit lost, even within groups. He just felt a little bit distant. So, look, Sean Dyche taught me years ago when I was running away from the alcohol problems that you can't do it. You cannot run away, that it will come and get you eventually. So now it looks like the issues are being met head on. He can start to heal. He can start to get better. But I remember Sean Dyche at the end of last season saying about Dele Alli that Dele does have a small injury at the minute, but it will not be a quick fix from coming back. And I think he knew what had been going on. And look, he's in the best place now. And now that he started to address the issues, I'm sure he can start to heal. And as long as that takes, it'll take. But just keep himself fit and keep himself mentally right. And the brilliant thing for me is when you think of Dele Alli, I think of that goal he scored against Crystal Palace, the little flick over the head, the pirouette, bang. Like these are things that only a world-class talent can do, like real world-class talent. So look, it's not about being a footballer, it's about being a human being. And if he can sort himself out as a human being, then the footballer will come along with it. And like I say, Sean Dyche, the best person there, best person around for him.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that brings us to a close for this week's weekly RTÉ Soccer podcast. Obviously, we've got the daily Women's World Cup ones. There'll be one today, another tomorrow, and then throughout Ireland's involvement in the tournament as well. And of course, the first game for Ireland against Australia in front of 80,000 people. That's on Thursday morning. Coverage starting on RT2 and the RT Player from 10:30 a.m. And also on the same channel before that, as I said earlier, New Zealand against Norway opening things up at 8 a.m. But Conan and Keith, thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Raf.